Hey my Shuga Bears, welcome back to my channel, Bougie AF. It's your host, OGJackeeNicole. It's where I say stay bougie on them. It's me feeding you feminism for the soul. It's my soul food offering. It's where I apply pressure to issues by being critical and logical. Now don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now let's get to the commentary where I can guarantee you I will be doing too much because that's just me. And like Sheree said, who's gonna check me, boo?
Welcome, Black y'all. You are tuned into the Bougie AF channel, and it's your girl, Nicole. So listen, I found this article last month in September, and about a month ago, and I was like, oh, I want to get to this because I thought it was just an interesting conversation piece to talk about. So y'all know, blackity black, gonna bring you all the black shit. But more or less, y'all know, I tried to. I'm sorry. Before I get into it, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I really appreciate that. All right, so y'all know I got my flyer up, Foundational Black American, and I know what you're talking about. So I have this flyer up because we're actually going to be talking about this article. When a white majority neighborhood wants to divorce its black city, right? So you're like, okay, so what does that have to do with your flyer that you made? Okay, so I didn't put it on here, but I could have easily put hashtag redlining, right? Again, my purpose of this flyer is to talk about certain key things so people can be educated and go educate themselves on the different issues concerning Black Americans, ADOS people, foundational black people, and freeman black people to find out more, so that way you can get educated, and so that way you can spread the word about our claim for reparations and why we're seeking it, right? And so part of that claim is what happened after the Civil War in terms of Jim Crow, which led to the great migration of black people from the South to the North, with all the laws and all the lynchings and all the other stuff, and just systematic racism and oppression that was happening in the South, and no real way of kind of making it out of our situation. There were still people sharecropping, which was like living on slave property, not as slaves, but as kind of like indentured servants, or where you worked for I think you worked for your what is it? You worked for your shelter, like you work to live there, right? Basically for the owner of the property somehow, some way. But it was never fair. You never, like, it was still backbreaking type of work. And it was like the whole family had to be a part of working on the farm to be able to have somewhere to live. So it was that type of situation going on. With that said, a lot of people migrated up north. A lot of cities and a lot of areas and a lot of towns came up with redlining. And redlining is like a systematic way that white people would keep black people from opportunities, in terms of, certain jobs, which in certain areas you probably weren't going to be able to get. You weren't going to be able to live in certain areas. You weren't going to be able to get certain types of loans, in which all that means, and your kids weren't going to be able to go to certain schools. So that's access being denied. That would help us as black people promote our growth, right? You hear all the time, oh, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, or you guys had all this time, and you hear that a lot of times with immigrants and stuff like that. You guys had all this time to make something of yourselves, and y'all still complaining about old shit. No. Slow it down and stop being disrespectful, right? I think anytime we have immigrants that want to talk about the progression of Black Americans in this country, then you don't know my history and you don't know what you're talking about. So if I go to them people's South Africa, I go to them people's Nigeria, you know what I do? Like I told y'all with them Eritrean women correcting them other folks, I mind my damn business. I don't know nothing about that. And I feel sometimes with Africans in terms of talking about black people here, mind your business. Just mind your business. That's how the fuck I feel about it. Just mind your business, because you would have to understand redlining. You'd have to understand them building them projects and putting my people in there like dogs. Like you would have to understand all of that, right? You would have to understand Tuskegee. You would have to understand that map I show you with all those massacres. Like, you would have to really understand those things, right? You would have to understand that Ruby Bridges is something that happened in 1950. That's not even 100 years ago, right? You'd have to get into that, right? So, with that being said, redlining was most something that till this day, when it talks about opportunity in terms of like why you can go to the hood and you can see more Muslim people, more Indian people, more Asian people that have been able to get a little bit money up or get access to getting loans, and having their own businesses, right? So we see a lot of corner stores, we see a lot of restaurants, we see all of that stuff. Those are all opportunities and things that we have not been able to do, right? Without having to go through fucking hoops to do it. right? So there's that part of it that a lot of people don't want to take into account. So there's this article on CNN, and it's part of their deconstructed, what is it? Race deconstructed series that they do. I recommend it. Who else do I recommend? Who's that guy on their show? Their channel, Kwame something. Is his name Kwame? Like, what is his name? The black guy with the afro and the glasses. I really like his show. His show is good. It's really interesting because he gets out there and talk to different people, white people, black people, Chinese. It doesn't matter, and talks about race. Like, he really has conversations. He also went to like sit with the KKK people. Sometimes when I think about like my tolerance to be able, and I tell y'all all the time, I don't care what my politics in terms is. If I have views on different international issues or different immigrant groups in this country, it's not a hateful one, right? For me, it's an honest one coming from my perspective and, the life I live and what I've came across. But it's not hateful, and it's not I'm not angry at any particular race or something like that. So when I see certain people, it just want to come out. I think a lot of times people forget, like, my show, my podcast, and the things I talk about, there's a level of entertainment that has to happen with me delivering my message, right? So sometimes I can be overly angry and talking my shit like, fuck them, I can't stand them, da, da, da. It is what it is. It's for the show, right? But in my everyday life, I button that shit up together. I've always been around different cultures and had to interact. So it's not something that carries over, but I do have my views, and they just are what they are. And it's what I believe. But I most definitely believe in treating people respectfully across the board. So no matter what my political belief, if you don't disrespect me, then there's nothing to worry about. Like, if you're not blatantly trying to be rude or something like that, there's nothing to worry about. I'm going to always tell an Asian person they nasty when they don't wash their hands when they come out the bathroom. I don't care how anybody feels about that. Like, that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do. Like, and it's not because I hate you because you're Asian. It's because I hate that you didn't wash your hands. Like, it's so weird that people... And that's who I've been seeing doing that, okay? So it should be so weird that people will try to get to the underlining of what they're trying to say and miss the message. Like, the message was, wash your fucking hands. Black, white, Asian, Chinese, I don't give a fuck. Wash your hands. That's the message. Nothing more, nothing less. That's it. All right, so the CNN article is called "When a White Majority Neighborhood Wants to Divorce Its Black City." So now let me show you it. That's the article, right? So that's what we're talking about. So I'm going to play the article now. I can't keep it up here because these people in these copyright laws, but I don't know what's going to get me. So I'm going to play it in the background, bring it up as I can. Hold on one second. I think it's going to have a commercial. Okay, good. All right, so I could have easily added hashtag redlining, but I thought this article and this video was great. Just think about it. This is not redlining in sense of like what happened back in the day, but I feel like it's a different form of redlining once you see the numbers of what they're talking about and the impact that it can have on the city of Atlanta. Now, we have to also be fair in thinking about what they're talking about of what's bothering them. It's not race-based of what they're trying to say. They're not making any like the people who have a problem, they're not saying because the black people.
Atlanta, like many across the U.S. right now, is experiencing an uptick in violent crime that has shaken its residents and left them wondering why.
At the end of the day, people are in fear.
Now some people in Atlanta's upscale neighborhood of Buckhead think they have the answer, breaking up with the city altogether. The idea of Buckhead seceding from Atlanta is hardly a new one, but it has caught steam in recent weeks as the violence unfolds. The latest incident, 2 teens allegedly shot a security guard in an attempt to break into an Apple store last weekend.
I really support this whole idea of people starting to stand up and say, no, we have to fight for our homes here.
Those homes account for only about 20% of the city's residents, but provide about 40% of the city's tax base.
I think it would be good to have control over our own roads, to have control over our police force. I think it would be great to see our tax dollars staying kind of local and being used here.
We've been talking to all of our neighbors. They're all fed up.
Bill White's group, the Buckhead City Committee, is gaining funding and traction as it calls for cityhood with leadership stronger than what White has seen with Atlanta Mayor Kiesha Lance Bottoms.
Why not just help elect a new Atlanta mayor who could help the issues in Buckhead?
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense to try to work with whoever the new mayor would be. The clinical definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result.
No one disagrees that there's a problem, but there's a major rift in how to fix it. Bill Torpy, a longtime columnist for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, says a secession would set a bad precedent.
This is 1861 all over again in the city of Atlanta.
And there are racial undercurrents. Atlanta is about 40% white, while the Buckhead neighborhood is about 75% white, according to 2019 U.S. Census data.
It's kind of an unsaid thing. But also, I think ultimately, I think the bigger picture is that it was moving these people away, moving this big section of the city away from the city of Atlanta would just be a devastating impact.
A financial impact that would bring uncertainty to the whole area, according to the man leading the campaign to keep Buckhead in Atlanta.
It's just a lot of little details that have to be worked out. In this case,
Ed Lindsay, a Republican who represented Buckhead in the Georgia legislature for a decade, says without clear specifics on a tax structure, what police and fire services look like, and what to do with thousands of children in Buckhead attending Atlanta public schools, the better way, he says, is electing new Atlanta leaders.
it's not a matter of simply carving things up. It's a matter of folks coming together and demanding better from our local elected officials.
All right, so I decided most definitely to pull it up. So I wanted you guys to see who was speaking. Of course, it's the 75% white people that were talking about seceding from the city of Atlanta. Now, the reason why I wanted to talk about it, like I said, I wanted you guys to, is this a form of redlining in terms of because they can vote and they can try to change it and do it that way. But do you guys feel like it's racially based that they want to do that because of the black city? Or are you able to see that they're concerned about how the city is ran and they don't like it, and the violence that is happening? Now, the temperature outside is crazy. Like, it is off the hook. They just talked about 2 teenagers trying to rob an Apple store that shot a security officer. There's all types of home invasions that are happening in Atlanta. I just pulled up this other article. Let's see. Violent crime continues in metro area as communities race to fight it, right? So I just pulled up this other one. And so they're saying Atlanta murders are up 16%, 113 murders so far. Like, I be on social media and I see all the celebrities that are complaining about home invasions. It was just this girl who was just shot in the head because somebody tried to rob her boyfriend and her at their home, right? So she was shot. There was this other rapper by the name of Akbar. She says somebody tried to knock on her door. Like, all the celebrities are telling how people have tried to, I think Lil Durk and his girlfriend got into a shootout of people trying to potentially rob them, right? So, like, all of this is like really going down. I even seen a story of a congressman or a city councilman or something in Atlanta, and he said he just went to get gas, and he had a Mercedes. He went to get gas, and he said it was just so fast. He said he turned around, he seen 4 kids. He said the oldest had to be like 12 or 13, and the youngest being 6 or 7, because he said he could tell from like the toys that the kid had in his hand. So those kids tried to rob him for his car. Right? So that means there's some type of high-end car smuggling ring in the area, because where exactly is this 12-year-old going except around the corner or where the meeting spot to drop that fucking car off, right? So it's really, really bad right now. So let me see. This article says, let's play that. All right, so I'm going to play this video. I had to stop the video that I was just previously doing and restart it again. So I'm starting from the point where I'm showing you this other video that's going to help illustrate the actual crime that is currently happening in these people in Atlanta, that's causing these white people in these people in Atlanta to say, hey, we kind of just don't want to be included with you guys, so we kind of just want to be our own thing. Do you mind? And if we can take our money with us, we'd greatly appreciate that. So that's most definitely what they're saying in Buckhead. So I'm going to go ahead and play this video. And I found this on 11alive.com. Check them out.
Well, violent crime continues to be the other pandemic in the metro area, and everyone from police to business leaders, office holders, candidates, and residents are searching for solutions to stop it. And they're doing it as the violence just since Labor Day has continued. Our John Sherrick is on the numbers and what's next.
The last 2 full weeks of summer across metro Atlanta. Hot, humid, horrific.
We heard all the gunshots.
A horrific, violent year.
And we came up on this chaos.
In the city of Atlanta alone, already more murders than last year. 16% more murders year to date as of Labor Day weekend, the latest numbers available, compared with the same period last year. In the past 2 weeks since then, in Atlanta there have been 6 more shooting deaths, 2 stabbing deaths. At a crime forum on Tuesday, Atlanta Police Chief Rodney Bryant said his department is focusing on a particular small group of violent criminals who keep getting bonded out of jail.
But it becomes very discouraging when you find yourself faced with a person that you've arrested time and time again.
Fulton County District Attorney Fonnie Willis last week received a budget boost, an additional $5 million a year from the county commission to hire more staff to try to keep violent criminals behind bars. But Willis said the money is late, so on September 28th, her office may be forced to begin releasing suspects because she didn't get the money soon enough to prosecute the cases promptly.
No, we're not going to get to every single case, and I'm not going to tell the public that we are.
On Tuesday, Lenox Square Mall in Atlanta will begin imposing a curfew because of all the violent crime at the mall. No one under 18 will be allowed on the property after 3 p.m. unless they have an escort who is at least 21 who will take responsibility for them.
They should have implemented this when they built Lenox Mall. It shouldn't have taken for anyone to lose their life.
No promise that autumn, arriving Wednesday, will deliver any respite from a hot year of violent crimes so far.
Yeesh. She said they should have did this from when they built them all. Like, what the hell? Damn. What? He said they should have did it from the beginning. It's so funny listening to that, because that was the first time I've heard it. And that district attorney saying that I'm not going to be able to prosecute all the time. So you have these people keep committing crimes, and they keep getting bonded out. And it's so funny the way that people work. You know, they'll do the crime and continue to do the crime. And once that sentencing come in, it's unfair at that point. Oh my God, look at all these years. It's unfair. It becomes about systematic racism. And at that point, it's hard in this community because that's not that. That is not going to be that. So when them people finally get convicted, when they finally are able to prosecute these people for these cases and they get these years, they have nobody to blame but themselves. Anytime you continuously keep on arresting people, yeah, they're going to keep that. They're going to keep that in the back of their mind. A judge is going to keep that in the back of their mind when they go ahead and sentence you for when they finally do get you, that they had to let you go numerous times because they were unable to. Yeah, it's going to play a part in that, and nobody's going to feel bad for you. But back to the white folks wanting y'all to get the fuck away from y'all. And that's literally what's going on in Atlanta. So murders so far in Atlanta alone were up 16% as Labor Day weekend compared with the same period in 2020. Now, let me look. I live in These Peoples, Boston, Massachusetts. We have 116 murders, and I think I can probably check. That probably number went up because I think this article we're looking at was released around June or July. But that's 116 so far in June. So let's see what it is in These Peoples Boston. What is it? Violence, homicide. Boston homicides in 2021. Okay, October 1st, it says it dropped. Okay, and so this is what my city is working with. There have been 20 homicides in the city so far in 2021. This was July 20 of 21, July 20, 2021. So I'm not even gonna look it up. I know we're only in October. It's not going up. It's not nowhere near 116, which was theirs in June. So I'm just trying to give you an idea of like what's really going on. But yeah, this says ours is down. But what I will say in terms of like what I see in my city, I just feel like everybody's attitudes are just crazy. People seem angry. It's not friendly outside. It's not friendly. It seems like there's just an anger out there. That's what it seems like. And I don't know. And it's not a black thing or a white thing. Like people just don't seem as friendly as they used to. And there's just a lot going on. You know, we talked about, I did that, we talked about The View, and we talked about Condoleezza Rice saying, hey, let's get back to that kitchen table talk, because that's what this is about, getting back to like the things that really matter to people. And that's not to say that January 6th don't matter to people, but it's one day that has happened so far in 2021. We've been hit back to back with such severe shit that we literally have to move on in that way until we can double back and really make sure that the judicial system is doing what it's supposed to do in terms of those people who tried to storm the Capitol, right? So we're gonna like have good hope and good faith that they are prosecuting these people like they're supposed to and all that other stuff. But at the same time, we can't just slow down from worrying about like like running out of food, gasoline, oil, and all that other stuff, and people being having jobs and like those are the daily concerns. Like, we can't bring nobody back from January 6th, and we want to prosecute. But she's most definitely right. Let's get to these issues, and media has to do a better job of getting back to the issues. Okay, so back to violence in Atlanta. It's up 16%. Whoa. And it's so funny because like I'm thinking about I want to move, and I always want to move to Atlanta. You know, you got Tyler Perry down there. Oh, you know what I'm saying? Y'all know I want to do some acting and stuff like that. So, but it's like I can't. I literally be seeing what's her name, Summer. She be having a gun sitting right next to her. She be at home, and I'm just like, damn. And it's so crazy in the world that we live in. Yeah, and people are desperate. They are robbing. Men are robbing women, like with no problem. Like I think Alexis Sky and one of her homegirls got their car snatched at a gas station. I think a kid may have been in there. Don't quote me, allegedly, and all that. But at the end of the day, like, it's really, really bad. So, you know, and the culture we live in, even if you think about what happened to Pop Smoke, that was a home invasion that went bad and he lost his life behind it. But a lot of that was because he was online flexing. I'm not gonna say he was online. It was like a delivery that ended up having his address on it, and somebody was able to obtain the address just from watching it on the phone. So I don't know what software program they got, but they froze that shit up and they enlarged it and was able to get the address. And they were only like 15 something years old, and they robbed and was trying to rob and kill and they ended up killing him. And they said that was an accident, or no, one of the kids said like that wasn't the plan, was never to kill anybody, right? But yeah, it is really going down. So, but yeah, I've been seeing all these people that was like, you know, we gotta have a gun. If you run up in here, just expect you're gonna shoot back. And it's just like, damn, that's a lot. But thinking about moving to Atlanta, I'm gonna get a gun, but I'm like, damn, I don't anticipate me having to use this thing. But the way it's going like it's happening down there, it seems like it's really bad. What else? Okay. Violent crimes remains everyone's other pandemic. Yeah, it is. Everyone, police, business leaders, office holders, candidates, and residents is searching for a solution to stop it as the violence since Labor Day continues. The other thing is, y'all know when we were talking and we were at this article and he was talking, not this one, we're getting there though. When we were looking at this article, one of the guy who spoke, and you guys didn't see him, and maybe I should play it again. Hold on, I'm gonna play it again. You guys didn't see him, but he talked about, one of the guys asked him, why don't you just work with the mayor and trying to get it done? And he's like, well, we've been there, done that. And that's the definition of, I guess he said, insanity, doing the same thing twice or continue doing the same thing and not getting a different result. So he's like, we don't want to do that. So basically from interpreting that, he's just saying that that's not somebody we can work with. We don't feel like that's going to help the situation here. And so we don't want to continue to keep on waiting, because basically what he's saying, Kiesha Lance Bottoms is not running for mayor again, right? So he's saying that we then have to work with a new mayor, and depending on what their politics are and what experience they have, we don't know how fruitful and how worth it may be to wait for another mayor. Now the problem is that when you have people like a Kiesha Lance Bottoms, and I'm not gonna say people but when you have Kiesha Lance Bottoms and you build your grassroots campaign, you get out there and you get all these celebrity rappers and stuff to support you and stuff like that, and to support you and campaign for you, it puts you in this weird, tricky spot. Like, as yesterday we talked about Condoleezza Rice, and there are some black people who don't like Condoleezza Rice because she's real solid in what she believes. And it necessarily doesn't on the mainstream black level kind of jive with what we feel in terms of some things. And I can say that as myself. I don't believe in everything Condoleezza Rice says, but she's someone I most definitely admire. With that being said, when you associate yourself with certain people coming into the door, right, it makes it harder for you to take certain stances on things, right? I'm pretty sure Kiesha Lance Bottoms would love to hire more police, right? But the time she got in there, you're associating yourself with Black Lives Matter. They're talking about defund the police, and they're overly, I mean, not overly, but you know, their message is like, oh yeah, I know people are doing things, but like, I'm sorry. Black Lives Matter message was most definitely just concentrated on police brutality, right? And so if you elect a mayor who comes into Atlanta talking about we're cracking down, the police is going to hit the streets like it's 1980, early 90s, Judy Giuliani style, she wouldn't have gotten into the office. We know that. Right? Because that was the reason why she was able to get all the support that she had and probably got the turnout and the votes that she got, because they probably thought they were going to get more liberal, more progressive. They thought they were going to get Sister Girl. And I mean, they did get Sister Girl, right? But I think it's kept her in a box in terms of being able to be a mayor to this city. And it's sad because I'm pretty sure she'd be a great mayor if she didn't feel this pressure from probably her social circle and the people she's aligned herself, who probably feel like, hey, we helped get you here, so don't get in there and start talking crazy. You doing too much, sis. You better keep it black, keep it cute, if you want to keep these votes. And I think that's borderline. So you have to always, when you're moving out here, watch the associations that you pick up along the way, because sometimes they can kind of, you know, you're going to owe somebody, and that's politics. You're going to owe somebody, and you're going to be friends with people, and there's going to be favors going back and forth. And, you know, y'all seen the shows, but that is a part of it. I know people don't want to talk about the ugly part of politics, but that is a part of it. And that's why when you have these bills and you have people like Joe Manchin and you have the other one from Arizona, who are trying to kind of going against their party and stuff like that and having to be swayed to do the fallen party lines. A lot of that is going to be about negotiating and them feeling like they're getting what they want, and they just know that they have an upper hand to be by going against the grain, but essentially kind of probably getting something and working something out for themselves. It's really disgusting, but it is a part of politics. And I think that's, you know, part of the problem with her is like she really can't come out and say certain things because of her associations. And it's sad. It is very sad. But, you know, we have questions over here, Kiesha. I'm not going to lie to you, because Dem Peoples, Sabrina Peterson says she let you know about Dem Peoples T.I and pulling a gun on her, and you kind of ignored her and kept on, you know, affiliating yourself with the T.I. So, you know, I have some questions over here at the Bougie one, because it just seems like these associations are not good associations if you're ignoring a man pulling a gun allegedly on a woman, right? So, but we're getting there. And so, you know, there's some other things that I think that's going to come to light in terms of Atlanta, especially to do with T.I and his wife and that whole debacle that they got going on down there allegedly. Because I want to know why your names disappeared off that police report, and that young boy who house y'all went over and pulled that gun out. I want to know why those names are not on there. Because it seems like there's some police corruption, you know? And it's kind of hard for Kiesha to get in there and fix those things if you're associating with the same people that are, you know, you're covering for at the same time. But, you know, who am I? I'm just a girl up north. I don't know. But back to why them people may want to not deal with this mayor and deal with the black residents, their neighbors, okay? So, yeah, so check this out. CNN Politics, race destructed analysis by Brandon Tinsley, CNN. This was when was it? September 23rd. Let's see. Buckhead wants to cut off the Black Mecca. Buckhead wants to cut out of the Black Mecca. I don't know why I ever like that. According to a September analysis by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, about 54% of residents surveyed strongly or somewhat support seceding from Georgia's capital, ostensibly, I don't know, spurred by fears of recent spikes in crimes across the city. So basically, let me tell you something. If they do secede, and now they may not say it's redlining, but if they do succeed, they are taking, like they said, 40% of the money, which is the tax that goes to Atlanta. But their town is 75% white. So they are going to start gatekeeping, and they will implement. And I don't know if it will be consciously or unconsciously, but I remember when we first moved to my town here in Massachusetts, when we moved here in the 90s, they had gotten in trouble for redlining, and part of the things that they would do would just be like like when you crossed over from like kind of the from Boston into my town, there's like a bridge you would cross. They would do things like set at different entry points of getting into my town and leaving my town, to catch people, you know what I mean, coming through, and to create an atmosphere of like, yeah, don't come here. Like, I think it sets a tone that, you know, you're going to be fucked with, and so don't come over here. So I think they got in trouble for that too, pulling people over and other stuff. So it's something that happened. Hold on. Oh yeah, so my town did most likely get in trouble. So it's something that is done. So if this town it gets what they want, which is seceding from Atlanta, most definitely they're probably going to implement a whole bunch of stuff that would fall in lines to what redlining is, which being more cautious about who moves in the neighborhood. And I know in my town they did things like they want to make sure you live there. You're like, your kids can't just walk over the bridge and come get an education. I mean, is that, I'm not going to say that is unfair or fair, but at the same time, if this town or this area gets what they want, they most definitely are going to gatekeep their everything, right? So they'll figure it out if that's what they really want, but it is going to turn into a redlining if they're able to succeed. So tell me what you think about that. Let me see. Racial demographics complicate the data. Well-to-do Buckhead is majority white neighborhood. Atlanta majority black. Some observers worry that cityhood for Buckhead could be devastating, removing access to revenue from a critical tax base and even deepening racial tensions. The combustible decades-long debate over Buckhead shines a light on a broader racial reality in the U.S. Today, you really have two kinds of racial segregation, residential segregation. Stephen Menendin, the assistant director and director of research at UC Berkeley's Othering and Belonging Institute, and the lead author of a June report on racial residential segregation in the 21st century, told CNN. Within large cities, you have racially identifiable neighborhoods in schools. You also have suburbs that are white and affluent, and then suburbs that are heavily non-white and much poorer. As Cheryl Cashin, a professor at the Georgetown University Law Center, explains it, the consequences of residential caste are vast. The successful have succeeded from the struggling. Highly educated and affluent people tend to live in their own neighborhoods and support policies like exclusionary zoning, exactly what I said, and neighborhood school assignments that lock others out and concentrate advantages. She writes in her essential new book, White Space, Black Hood, Opportunity, Hoarding, and Segregation in the Age of Inequality. Here's an overview of how the U.S. got to this point. Again, this is really important. I could have hashtagged this on the flyer for redlining because this is most definitely a part of what we talk about, what's kept us back. It is opportunity hoarding. That's what redlining is, and segregating, most definitely. And it's so weird because sometimes I be on Clubhouse and they're talking about would we have been better if we was in segregation? Would we were doing better? We had more businesses and stuff like that, and we were better as a community. And sometimes I don't understand that way of thinking, only because if we're segregated in any way in terms of being left out of opportunities, yes, our businesses, we may have had more businesses, but they only serviced us, right? So there's a ceiling in our opportunities at that point. If we're just talking about segregation and service and our own, like, you're not going to reach the full max potential of being successful. And you wouldn't even, business wouldn't even have opportunities if we still had any form of segregation in place. So, and it just seems like more or less people just want us to community-wise get to a better place where we support each other and try to build up our communities. And I can most definitely understand feeling like, oh, we kind of were better in a community way back then, but were we better, or was it because that's all we had? So we heavily depended on each other. So, I mean, I think there's different ways to look at it. I'm never going to say that I would want to go back to segregation. I wouldn't even want to go back to an all-black country ran by you niggas, because, I mean, y'all just decided R. Kelly was guilty. Y'all just 61-year-old men marrying 18-year-old girls. You have certain men who think this is normal. I'm all set. I think there's some checks and balances, but us all being together. Being completely honest, that's just how I feel about it. Let's go. CashApp presents three anti-black processes that sustain residential caste. One is boundary maintenance, exactly, or practices and policies that keep black people at a remove. Recall the secession fight over Buckhead, a patrician neighborhood that's long played an important role in Atlanta's history of race and space. As the Princeton University professor Kevin M. Cruz maps out in his 2007 book, White Flight, Atlanta in the Making of Modern Conservatism. Or think about the uneven impact that highway construction can have on marginalized groups of the people who would be displaced by a project to expand the West I 526 low country corridor in South Carolina. 94% live in largely black and brown communities. So what another thing that they did in terms of breaking up communities and creating separations, they had started putting highways in certain cities and certain towns and certain places that would create this divide in some cities. And I know I've heard people complain about that in Chicago. So this was most definitely a real thing, and this is highlighting it being done in South Carolina. Another process is opportunity hoarding, or over reinvesting in some communities while disinvesting elsewhere. CashApp calls the former gold standard neighborhoods of tremendous opportunity that are frequently subsidized by everyone else and that get the best of everything, from grocery stores to infrastructure to schools. In fact, schools are one of the best indicators of racial segregation. If you really want to get a handle on this, go online, look at the schools in your community, and look at the racial demographics of those schools. Do some work, look into it. I also say you have to do that, especially when you're like buying houses and you're moving places. You should be looking at your schools and your community if your kids are going to go there. Like, don't move anywhere that if they have bad schools. They're often stark in any major metropolis unless there's an integration program, Maneden said. I guess integration program would be sort of like in Massachusetts, we have a program called METCO where select few, if you're chosen, there's a list that you have to stay on that you could be chosen to go out to be bused to the suburban schools. Now, there are some people who say it was a great and they loved it, and there are others who say, I felt awkward and it wasn't always the best experience because a lot of times with those white kids, and I can say that because in my town, because in my town, black people were only living on one side, right? And so the east side of my town was nothing but white people. And I remember my 5th grade year, it was only 2 black girls, me and, sometime I mentioned a big girl who was loud and wrong and just did shit for attention. Her, like, we were the only 2 black girls in our 5th grade class. Now, just reminding you, like, that was like so we were only 2 girls in that graduating class. Now, on the east side, but we had originally went to school on the west side, and so there we were the majority. But going to the other side, it was just us 2. Now the problems I went through with the white kids there was just crazy, being called a monkey, all this other stuff, and blah 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 blah. So like it's real that these kids will be in the suburbs and never have any real experiences with black people, right? So it was a cultural shock for them, especially with me moving there, and I am who I am, and so I didn't take no shit. So, but it was so weird. I can honestly say, going back and looking back, some of those same people, even though they gave me a hard time in 5th grade because being black and whatever. By the time we got to 6th grade, in in my town, all of the elementary schools come together in 6th grade, it wasn't a thing anymore because, you had to mix and you had to be considerate and learn and deal with other people in different cultures. So I most definitely say that is most definitely something a kid, if they're bussed out to METCO here in my town, in my city, yeah, it's hard to deal with because some of those kids never, and some of those teachers, okay, have never really kind of dealt with black people on a day in a day out basis. Like, we have to keep it real about that sometime with our interactions when it comes to these teachers. I mean, you talk about the prison the school to prison pipeline and stuff like that and how that happens. I will honestly say sometimes in like suburban schools and white teachers who don't deal with black kids, especially black boys a lot, I think they do kind of overreact and sometimes sort of like police over the black students more unnecessarily. Y'all know what I'm talking about in terms of like when we're all together, or if we get together in public spaces, you all of a sudden start to see security, so, coming together to watch where we're at or stuff like that. And I think that a form of that happens in these schools. All right, so let me get back to this. So, I mean, some people look at it as a good thing. What is another form of integration plan? I know there's charter schools that people try to, also, that's something that some cities are using. I know we have them here. And some people don't like charter schools because it takes away from the budget of the regular public schools, and they're just like, whoa, you can't just take money that could go to the masses, which are kids who are unable to get into the charter schools, and leave the public schools at a deficit by putting money into a small group of people when that money is essentially supposed to be for the masses. So there are some people who feel some sort of way about charter schools too. The third process is stereotype-driven surveillance. It's easier to harden boundaries and isolate opportunity when the image of the hood is as devoid of dimensions as it is. Former President Donald Trump was the most vulgar broadcaster of what Cashin refers to as ghetto myths, but others also have nourished these narratives. What does these stereotypes what does this stereotyping look like? Let's revisit the Trump examples. Remember when he crossed swords with Democratic Representative Elijah Cummings? Yeah, he was nasty. Rest in peace, Elijah Cummings. What a great man. Who represented Maryland's majority black 7th Congressional District, which included parts of Baltimore where Cummings was born. Over conditions at the U.S.-Mexico border. Cummings' district is disgusting. Oh, damn. Okay, so I don't know if I feel like they did. Okay, so they got in a disagreement with what was happening at the border, which means like Trump was putting kids in cages and shit like that. So they got into a disagreement with that, and Trump's response was, Cummings' district is a disgusting rat and rodent infested mess. If he spent more time in Baltimore, maybe he can help clean up this very dangerous and filthy place, Trump tweeted in 2019. Now, just to remind you, he's talking like that because I believe either him or Jared Kushner's family owned properties in Dem Peoples Baltimore that they may have gotten in trouble for being slumlords. And I'm pretty sure it's him. I think his father owned property in Baltimore, so that's why he's talking greasy like this. But don't quote me in allegedly. It was the precise sort of comment repellent, clueless, clueless made on Twitter. It was the precise sort of comment repellent, clueless made on Twitter that was characteristic of the former president in his rant. Trump didn't only snap back at his innumerable critics. He conjured the mythos of the inner city, the black ghetto, disgusting, dangerous, and filthy. So he was most definitely channeling Richard Nixon, all those other white officials that would, refer to the ghetto and the hood in a very disgusting way. Other politicians has tossed around similar rhetoric. Here's Rudy Giuliani, who in the aftermath of the 2020 presidential election made fact-free accusations of voter fraud against cities with significant black populations. Happens all the time in Philly, and it's allowed to happen because it's a Democrat corrupt city, and it has been for years, many years, and they carried it out in places where they could get away from it. What the fuck does that mean? Rudy Giuliani is also a racist, and I think if you really go back and look at how he cleaned up New York City, you'll understand like why this rhetoric and stuff would be something that he's about. Like he cleaned up New York City by brute force. There are people who got caught up. If you know the story of what's his name? Is his name Larry Davis or Larry Holmes? Hold on one second. He was on American Gangster that and the way they handled him. After he refused to continue to work with them, after they supplied him drugs and then tried to take him out in a shooting where he says that they fired first and they say that he fired first, but he was the only person in the home. Now, at the time, he was in the home with his sisters and his nieces and nephews and other family members, and they did not give a flying but they wanted to kill him. But yeah, the New York in the 80s and 90s, and how Rudy Giuliani got coined New York's mayor, or the what did he get coined, United States mayor, or New York's mayor, like the world mayor, like something. He got termed that. Like, people loved him for what he had did in New York City. But if you were black and you knew what happened to Larry Davis, and you knew essentially like the day in of like how police were getting it done, you knew he just was a nasty man, basically. So we weren't surprised by like how he showed up and like really had to kind of show his face. I think in politics, if you can get away with a lot if you can keep it cool and keep it tight in terms of like your real rhetoric, that shit you talk when you're away from people. You can keep that out of public headlines. It takes a little bit longer for people to kind of catch up to who you are and sniff you out. And I think with Giuliani, it like for some people, I'm talking about for the masses, those who are around, no, or who look into things, no. But for the masses, they didn't get to see it until he associated himself with Trump. I think we are finding out that Giuliani really associated himself with Trump, because I don't think he really liked him beforehand or whatever, but I think he really associated himself with him because I think it's because of money. I think he doesn't have as much money as he thought he should or would have at this point in life, and from allegedly in the divorce and all the other stuff, he needed money. So I think he was out here. I think Trump had a trick, and his trick lawyer was Giuliani. That's it. Wait. And here's Law and Order booster Richard Nixon in 1967, in the thick of a years-long nationwide wave of black rebellion. Today in the urban slums, the limits of responsible actions are all but invisible. Oh. Slums, okay. Even politicians on the other side of the aisle have sustained ghetto myths. After the killing of Freddie Gray, former President Barack Obama condemned the thugs who tore up Baltimore. He was talking about vandals, but he was still participating in a very specific anti-black idea. Cashin told CNN. Correct. They are correct for calling that out. President Barack Obama was definitely was participating in that, and probably didn't even think of it at the time. Sometimes you got to be called out and told how that sounds, and that's not to say that I'm pretty sure he didn't mean it to sound that way, and he probably learned from that. But it does sound like thugs who tore up the city. But basically, but now I'll be completely honest. Him saying thugs who tore up the city is based on the fact of when it came to protesting and stuff like that. We were the only ones who protested in our own city and tore up our own shit. And let me think back. We were one of the only people who continue to do that. And so I think, yeah, for him, it was a black thing when it came to like tearing shit up. It wasn't until we seen George Floyd and see how people hit them streets and it was white and black and they were tearing shit up. So it's a different image where you can't just say it's like race specific and it's the thugs or it's the the nefarious people of society that's fucking shit up. No, this was, I seen video of this one white girl, blonde hair, holding her phone, windows bust out, and she's just casually walking around the store, putting shit in her bag, right? There's a different face to vandalism and stealing and stuff like that. And so, different times, and January 6th did show, like, when they protest, that's how that looks. So where was the rhetoric to call them thugs and all this other stuff? And I think that's what people were so upset with Donald Trump was, because when it came to Charlottesville, good people on both sides, sir, what are you talking about, right? Why do you find a way to be optimistic and be optimistic when it's not minority people committing the crime, right? You don't want to be too hard on them. Does residential segregation look the same today as it did a few decades ago? It looks quite a bit different. Meninian said that about 5 or 6 decades ago, you could find the same pattern of segregation in almost every major city. I think the patterns are different now. Because they do it differently now. In big urban areas, black families were circumscribed to a small number of neighborhoods. Facts. And that's why I think more or less that's why the balance is what it is currently, because people continue to actually stay around each other, stay in the same areas. That's why when it comes to white people and cousins, right, you will see a white family and they may be 5 children in that family, and they, of course they had children, so which means grandchildren, right? But you'll notice that they'll sometimes be in far away from each other. They'll be in different parts of the country. They're more spread out. Whereas black people, because of our limited access to wealth and being able to move and stuff like that, you tend to see us all in the same areas a lot of time and always around each other. I think after high school, and I think that's what kind of contributes to violence in our inner cities, because those same people you grew up with your whole life, you're still around. The same people you have problems with, you're still interacting with in some type of way. It's from being in social circles or going out and being around each other. And I just think people just tend to just, because we stay around each other so long and so much, that I think that's part of the reason violence happened. That's just my personal opinion, because majority of people who move away from each other are not beefing with each other. Like, it just is what it is. Or families that are spread out and stuff like that. And and sometimes we having big, from watching all these American gangsters, sometimes it becomes a family who does crime together. You have your cousins back and stuff like that. And like, it's a repetitive cycle that continues to keep happening. Oh, let me see, where was I at? Black families were circumscribed to a small number of neighborhoods that were often downwind of factories, near industrial areas, or close to various environmental containment. White families, on the other hand, lived in the same cities, but in dramatically different neighborhoods. Like, they literally don't live next to each other. Like, you're not going to find white people who don't like each other from back in the day that are still moving around each other, coming in and out their house, looking at each other, mad at each other, wanting to see, if I see you out there, waiting to set it off. Like, it's not that, no, I don't know that person next door. Like, literally, that's what it is. Notably, this trend fits with Cashin's notion of boundary maintenance. The main response by the locals and the federal government to some 6 million great migrants escaping Jim Crow is going north and west was essentially to contain them in their own neighborhoods, she said. See, remember I told you that people were leaving the South in terms of Jim Crow because of the lack of ability to like, sharecropping was still happening. People couldn't get jobs. There was no real access because, the opportunities wasn't for was being given to black people, right? And so what they're saying is, when cities up north seen the migration from the Jim Crow, they essentially started to implement what we've been talking about in terms of like keeping black people away, like putting them in certain areas. You couldn't move here, you couldn't do this, you couldn't do that. So yeah, the United States race and ethnicities across the nation. God, you would think I can't even read. The hell? The United States is more diverse and has more people than ever before, with much of the growth occurring in and around the metropolitan areas. According to the 2020 census, by plotting the population onto a map of the country according to density and group, it's possible to get a bird's eye view of where we live and how we identify. Okay, so this is New York City. Okay, so the real light blue over here would indicate white people, right? Black people is like the orange. Which other ones I want to look at? Hispanic people is the dark red, and the Asian people is the dark blue, right? And I think they want you to look at this map and come to some conclusions about where people are migrating to or where people are settling to, right? As you can see, heavily concentration of black people still live in Brooklyn. I can't see this area over here. We still live in Brooklyn. We're heavily in Newark, New Jersey City, and this is the New York, New Jersey area. This area right here, I'm not sure what this is, but we're right here. They're saying on this map. Oh shit, y'all. I thought the map was up, y'all. Here we go. So this is what I'm looking at. So I was saying the white people represents the light blue, the black people represents the orange, and the Hispanic people represent the red. Now, this is the article I have been reading from. I'm sorry, y'all. I thought y'all were able to see it. But this is the article that I've been reading from. We watched the video, and so I was just going through the article and highlighting what they're saying, what stereotyping looks like, and the different forms of what essentially is redlining in residential cast. I mean, these are things that you guys should most definitely look into and learn more about. Just learn more about. But all right, so back to this map where they're trying to say like this is how you can take a look and see like the trends of like where people are settling at in terms of like what schools may look like. You want to look and see what schools look like in this area of Brooklyn, right? You'd want to see what schools look like in this area of East Orange, Irvington, and Hillside. These are some of the roughest areas where you see the majority of the black people are at. And I think this right here is Harlem. I'm not really quite sure on the layout, but I think this may be Harlem right here where you see Manhattan. But what you see in actual Manhattan, I'm talking about the most expensive areas and stuff like that. Or is this? This could be Harlem right here. I'm not sure. But light blue, what you can see here is that this is where white people are living at, and that's the most expensive area in the city. So surrounding right here is the most expensive area, and then you see this pocket of red people, and I'm not quite sure what area that is, to be completely honest. I think it may be the Bronx and Capitol Heights, because I hear the Bronx. I think this may be the Bronx because I think it's a large Spanish population. So I don't want to guess anymore, but this is what they're saying to look at, and where I'm telling you where those oranges are, which represents black people, are the most dangerous cities, and that's what they want you to see, right? See where the wealth is, see where people are living at, and how they come together and be in certain communities, and what exactly can you tell about those communities from this map? You can most definitely tell because you see all those light blues. Wherever you see the light blues, in the dark blues, you can bet that it's probably better neighborhoods, more access to better stores, probably have greater security details, probably have more police patrols. It's just probably a better city living in those areas, basically. Okay. By the 1990s, residential patterns began to change. For one, between 1990 and 2000, large groups of people of color, fueled by greater income levels and less housing discrimination, among other things, started to move into the suburbs. But as the suburbs diversed, they also began to further fragment into inner ring suburbs and wealthier outer ring suburbs, or exurbs. What the fuck is that? Which typically have newer infrastructure and better schools. It's still segregation, just in a different guise. As the UC Berkeley report lays out in a granular detail, not only are most of the major metropolitan regions and cities highly segregated, but we find that nearly 81% American cities and metropolitan regions are more segregated today than they were in 1990, and several decades of federal policy applied to this problem. Let's read that again. Okay, so basically what they're saying, so if you go back up to this map and you see that not only most of our major metropolitan regions and cities are highly segregated, but we find that nearly 81% American cities and metropolitan regions are more segregated than they were in the 1990s after several decades of federal policy applied to this problem. So we're more segregated than we were in the 1990s is what they're saying. And so if you look at this map, that's exactly what they're saying too. Right? You see pockets of where people have come together. But how much is that of tribalism, and people go and live around people that they have the most in common with, or they're most like identified with, right? And so, yeah, if you are white and you're making a lot of money and you want to be around other white people who make a lot of money, you're going to come together, you're going to live in the New York, Manhattan area. And so whatever that community looks like in Queens, which it seems to be more Asian and white, I'm more comfortable around Asian and white people, so I'm gonna. So that literally is what they're saying, is that it actually shows more segregation has happened on its own, naturally or by people, but it's usually based around financial circumstances, basically, and that's how you end up seeing these pockets. Because if that was the case, you would see a whole bunch of orange. You would see a whole bunch of orange dots in the Manhattan area if it wasn't about the financial part of it, right? Why wouldn't you want to live in near downtown New York City, right? if you can't afford it, you won't, right? So the people who can't afford it, they live on the outskirts. You see this Newark, you see this Brooklyn, you see this over here, you see outskirts, majority orange, New Jersey, Greenville. You see that Elizabeth, outskirts. We're on the outskirts. Spanish people, black people on the outskirts. So basically, they're saying that you still see the segregation, but the segregation has to do with the wealth. Period. Pooh. Let's see. Is it possible to break up boundaries of residential casts? As you might imagine, concretizing, I don't know what that word is, aspirations for large-scale change won't be easy or straightforward, but there's hope to be had. I guess they're saying concentrating on the aspirations for large-scale change. I don't know. Like trying to get the change that you want? I don't know. Integrate and invest. We need to resurface the reality that racial segregation is really the core cause of racial inequality. Mandolin said in June, you can't zero out racial inequality in a highly segregated society. No, you can't. Cashin underscores that she's inspired by the fact that the U.S. has ascending multiracial coalitions of people who say that Black Lives Matter. There are grown coalitions that can get to 51% in mayoral races, in the city council race. In a debate about, are we going to do our part to affirm and further fair housing? Are we going to pass a mandatory inclusionary zoning ordinance? Are we going to support racial equality and neighborhood analysts that pays attention to how we spend money, she said. Baltimore has made headway in this regard by ballot initiatives. The city recently changed its charter and created a permanent fund to nurture racial inequality in education, housing, and the budget. The move allowed Baltimore to start repairing and atoning for its treatment of historically underfunded Black neighborhoods. I sense an authenticity, Cashin added. People seem to want something much more than a society that's premised on separate and unequal, a society that premised on fear and the exclusion of the other. So I guess they're trying to, reinvest in certain neighborhoods that make it more fair. So what they're saying, they changed their charter, because I'm pretty sure, I don't know, like I said, I'm guessing that the way every town, every city has charters in terms of like investment, in terms of like their money and taxes and stuff like that. So they're saying that they may have changed their charters so that way they can go into the certain neighborhoods and put reinvestments and make some changes and not have to make it about, the zip code getting the fund, because it's heavily lopsided by white taxpayer money, so they can, overly invest in their neighborhoods because they have it to do. So kind of spreading that out a little bit more and being intentional. That's what it sounds like to me. I could be wrong. Getting those comments, let me know. I'm gonna go ahead and get off here. This is longer than I thought. I was trying to do a half an hour. I literally didn't know this daggone article was this long. I really didn't. Like, I thought I was just gonna play the video and and then the more I kept scrolling down, I'm like, damn, there's more. But this was a really good article. Compared to one of the other ones I read, this one was really good. So please check this out. This is on Race Deconstructed. CNN, they do this. Also, I think I did tell you about the guy who I watch on CNN that I think is really good. He does a lot of pieces and conversations about race and going and talking with the people. All right, y'all, I am out. Y'all keep it bougie as F. Y'all keep it posh as F. Y'all keep it black as F. And, holla at your girl. Bye.